Hello again, Office It's me, Raf, back once again to share some more aquascaping experiences with you. Today I will be talking about very easy to grow plants that I have had in my tank and give my quick opinion on them. I want to share an overview of them in the hopes that it alleviates some fears a new person in plant keeping may have. After years of taking care of several different varieties of plants, I have become confident in caring for them and wanted to share whatever knowledge I have about them and make someone's plant keeping experience easier. Please note that I am listing them in no particular order, just in the order that I can remember I got them as. Okay, so the first plant I wanted to talk about is Limnophilia sessiflora and or Limnophilia indica. So these two types of plants, in my opinion, are the perfect beginner plants. They can be used as background or foreground plants. They can be used as carpeting plants depending on how you trim them. They grow astonishingly fast even when grown in low-tech conditions. Each leaf node has a bright green circular and somewhat feather-like arrangement of leaves. However, because they grow so quickly, frequent trimmings are necessary. If you are someone who is not a fan of frequently doing maintenance work on your tank, you may find these frequent trimmings quite bothersome. So just something to keep in mind, but overall this plant is absolutely amazing. Plant number two is Myriophyllum Spicatum. This plant, in my opinion, is very similar to the two Limnophilia plants that I just spoke about. And they have very similar characters in growing rates, how easy it is to grow, and appearance, based on my own experiences. Where they differ is that the stems are much thinner in the spicatum than of any other plants that I've tried before, and I can't seem to use them as carpeting plants. They seem to be kind of too wavy and goes in like all different directions that are unpredictable. Um, with regards to this plant here, I find that the best way to use them is to just plant them as background plants and let them grow into these tall and lush background plants. Plant number three would be Hydrophilic Formus. This is the plant that I used for my very first fully planted aquascape. When fully grown, it will cover a tank from top to bottom, side to side, front to back, with a thick, lush growth. This plant is very fast growing despite receiving lower amounts of light, nutrients, and CO2. Their leaves are of a striking shape similar to that of a snowflake limb. Its leaves stretch out nicely from the center, and then it creates leaf edges that are sharp and dagger-like in shape. However, this plant can and will spread like an invasive weed in your tank and requires frequent trimmings that can be tedious for most fish keepers. On to plant number four. That would be Hydrophilic Polysperma. Now, this is the very first non-all green colored plant that I've ever had in my tank. It can grow in situations where light is not abundant and there's zero CO2 infusion, though it may need some liquid fertilizing in the tank to remain healthy. When new leaves emerge, they are a magnificent, bright pink color that slowly turns into a beautiful contrast of bright green leaves and light colored leaf veins. However, because they grow quickly and densely, they can quickly choke out the bottom parts of the plant, which could lead to those parts of the plant dying. I've also noticed nutrient deficiencies in these plants before, as evidenced by pinholes in the leaves, so make sure that you use liquid fertilizers. Plant number five is Rotala achra. Now, this plant is a stunning plant. It turns red in high lighting, dark pink in good lighting, and lighter pink in decent lighting. It is a fast grower and does not really need high amounts of light, nutrients, or CO2. I discovered that in a zero tech environment like a Jarium, the plant simply turns a bright green and looks exactly like Rotala greens or Rotundifolia. Planting in a cluster is a must as they will grow very lush and bushy. Planting one stem at a time will cause the plant to kind of droop or bend to a specific to a side, which can be very unsightly. This is the only downside to this plant that I have ever encountered. Otherwise, beautiful, beautiful red or dark pink plant to have in your aquarium. The next one is Rotala rotundifolia. Now, this plant is very similar to Rotala atra, so I won't be going into too much different details here between the two. Rotala rotundifolia is like a green version of the atra, and it seems to be a slightly slower growing plant than atra. In my tank, when planting them together side by side, and allowing them to grow uh, in the same conditions. The atria simply outgrows the rotundifolia and it kind of just dominates it for space. I can see that I still have some taller rotundifolia growing, but it's from a little spot between the atria and the spicatum clusters. Otherwise, it's very much comparable to the atria, except that it's greener and that it's a bit slower in the growth rate. Up next is Turgonia Weapons. Now, this is my very first actual carpeting plant, and this plant can grow between low to high lighting conditions, but does much better in higher lighting conditions. It requires some liquid fertilizing or root tabs to grow healthy, but can also grow without CO2 infusion, but at a much slower rate. So if you want a thick carpet quickly, then CO2 infusion is required. It is a beautiful plant whose leaf shape is similar to that of a compass symbol. In my own experience, once a substrate becomes depleted of nutrients, this plant is the first one to show signs of nutrient deficiency. You'll see on the leaves that there are pinholes starting to emerge, and that is your sign that you need to start using more root tabs in your substrate to replenish the lost nutrients. Making our way through Limnophilia Heperidoides. Now, this plant is a stunning mix of long purple leaves and bright green stems. Each stem has several leaf nodes, each having 3 to 5 elongated leaves, making each stem look extremely lush. They grow noticeably quickly in ideal conditions, but can also live in a zero-tech environment such as a Jarium. I know this because I have used this plant in my Jarium, but it grows slowly in there, and it only turns a green color instead of red or purple. These plants do much better when they have a good amount of space from other plants. For some reason, I find that when I find them in a crowded space, even if it's by amongst themselves, they don't grow as quickly or as lushly. I'm guessing it's because they get their nutrient supply blocked off. Ludwigia Weapons is another beautiful and hardy plant that I wanted to talk about. This plant is the most readily available plant to buy that I have seen in all fish stores in my city. It usually has red roundish leaves when grown in highlights, nutrient-rich water, and with CO2 infusion. However, it doesn't seem to survive zero-tech artificial environments. It's the only plant that I have introduced into my Jarium to not survive. This plant was painstakingly slow growing in zero-tech conditions. However, once I've introduced it into my main tank, it started to grow a little faster, though not by that much. However, it's taken a more reddish hue. So, in nutrient-rich water, high lights, and zero CO2 infusion, it will survive and grow slowly, but in zero tech conditions, it will not survive. Nymphaea Carry is the most visually impactful plant that I've ever owned. It is a lily bulb type plant. It has broad heart-shaped leaves ranging from vivid red to bright green. Unlike other red plants, it is an easy to grow plant whose bulb you can simply place securely in a small crevice between rocks where it will spread roots for anchoring itself and gathering nutrients. However, its leaves can grow so broad that it may shade significant portions of the tank unintentionally. However, other than that, in my opinion, for this red kind of plant, this is a plug and play kind of plant, for the lack of a better term. You put it in a space and you just forget about it, and it will grow for you, but it grows very slowly. So just keep that in mind. All right, everyone. Thank you once again for joining me in another one of my videos. I hope you found it informative and helpful when making decisions on which plants to get for your aquarium. If you like this video, please make sure that you like and follow me on Instagram. Thank you and have a good day.